The Book of Esther leaves room for interpretation and speculation, and they have led to various literary and artistic adaptations and interpretations of her story over the centuries. To learn more about these aspects, scholars and readers often turn to historical context and traditions beyond the biblical text. The Bible does not provide detailed information about certain aspects of Esther's life and the events surrounding her. While the Book of Esther is a key source for her story, there are several hidden aspects that the Bible does not explicitly discuss. The Bible does not provide extensive details about Esther's early life before she was taken into the king's palace. Her family background, childhood, and the circumstances that led to her adoption by Mordecai are not elaborated upon. The Bible offers little insight into Esther's personal emotions and inner thoughts during the events she experienced. It doesn't provide a deep exploration of her feelings, fears, or struggles as she navigated the complex political and personal challenges. While the Bible describes Esther's marriage to King Xerxes, it does not delve into the details of their relationship, how they interacted on a daily basis, or the dynamics of their marriage. The Book of Esther concludes with the events surrounding the defeat of Haman and the establishment of the Feast of Purim. It does not provide information about what happened to Esther and Mordecai after these events or how their lives unfolded. While the Book of Esther highlights her role in uncovering Haman's plot and interceding on behalf of the Jewish people, it doesn't provide an in-depth exploration of her involvement in the broader political affairs of the Persian court.
So what is the biblical narrative of Esther and Xerxes I?
The story begins with a lavish banquet hosted by King Ahasuerus, often identified with Xerxes I, in the capital city of Susa. The king wanted to display the wealth and glory of his empire. The banquet lasted for 180 days, and a separate banquet for the city's inhabitants followed. During the festivities, King Ahasuerus summoned his queen, Vashti, to appear before his guests and display her beauty. However, Vashti refused to obey the king's command. Her refusal greatly angered the king and his advisors. As a result of Vashti's refusal, King Ahasuerus sought a new queen. Beautiful young women from throughout the empire were gathered for a beauty contest. Among them was a Jewish girl named Esther, the orphaned cousin of Mordecai. Esther found favor with the king and was selected to be the new queen, though her Jewish identity remained secret at Mordecai's insistence. While at the king's gate, Mordecai overheard a plot to assassinate the king and informed Esther, who relayed the information to the king. The conspirators were apprehended and executed. Haman, a high-ranking official in the Persian court, became greatly offended when Mordecai refused to bow to him. In retaliation, Haman devised a plan to exterminate all the Jews throughout the empire. He cast lots, Purim, to determine the date for this planned genocide.
Wow, so how did Haman come out with such kind of an idea?
In the Midrashic account, Haman had 365 advisors, like the days of the year, but none could give him advice as good as that of his wife Zeresh. She told him, "If this man of whom you speak is of Jewish stock, you will not overcome him, but you must act wisely against him. If you were to drop him into a fiery furnace, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were already dropped down there, and they were saved. If you were to throw him into a lion's den, Daniel was already thrown into a lion's den, and he emerged unscathed. If you were to put him in prison, Joseph was already incarcerated there, and he left it. If you were to send him to the wilderness, Israel already were in the wilderness. They were fruitful and multiplied. They withstood all the tests, and they were saved. If you were to blind him, Samson killed many Philistines when he was blind. But hang him on the gallows, for we have not found a single one of the Jews who was saved from hanging." Fast forward, Esther 5:14. In the Bible, it is said that the proposal pleased Haman, and he had the gallows put up. The next morning, the table turned, and it didn't favor Haman. Esther unveiled his devious plots against the king, Xerxes, and by so doing, Haman was hanged on the gallows instead of Mordecai.
Not an easy one there. So what happened next after Haman was killed?
With Haman's downfall, the immediate threat to the Jewish community had been averted. However, the king's edict allowing the massacre of the Jews remained in place. Esther continued to plead with Ahasuerus, and the king issued a new decree that allowed the Jews to defend themselves against anyone who sought to harm them. The appointed day arrived, and a wave of violence and self-defense swept through the empire.
Wow, I see. So what is the historical narrative also on Esther's story? Can you let us know of that too?
Now here are some key notes the Bible didn't talk about that were recorded in other books, like the rabbis and Midrash. Queen Esther, the central character of the biblical book named after her, is depicted extensively and with sympathy in rabbinic sources. These sources expand upon and provide additional details about her life, her lineage, and her relationships with other characters, including Ahasuerus, Mordecai, and Haman. Esther's origins and her adoption by Mordecai. The Bible portrays Esther as an orphan raised by her uncle Mordecai. According to rabbinic sources, her mother died during childbirth, and her father passed away during her mother's pregnancy. Mordecai had to care for her, and there are different traditions regarding who nursed Esther. In the Babylonian tradition, it's believed that Esther was Mordecai's wife, and her adoption by him was seen as a marriage. This interpretation adds complexity to her situation, as she was taken to the royal harem despite being married to Mordecai. Hadassah, that is, Esther. Esther is said to have had two names, Hadassah and Esther. Rabbinic interpretations offer various reasons for these names. The prevalent opinion is that Hadassah was her second name. The rabbis provide symbolic meanings for her names, including connections to righteousness, appearance, and character. Additional names for Esther. Esther is compared to various symbols, including a hind, the dawn, a wolf, the moon, and a stove where pots are placed. Esther's age, the exact age of Esther when she entered Ahasuerus' palace, is not specified in the Book of Esther. Rabbinic traditions offer different ages for her, ranging from 40 to 80 years. These traditions are based on numerical interpretations and comparisons to other biblical figures. Esther in the harem. Esther's time in the harem is elaborated upon in the rabbinic sources. She is described as attempting to evade the king's selection, but is ultimately chosen as queen. She was given 7 maids to help her in the harem and used them to keep track of the days of the week. Esther's personal status. The rabbinic sources discuss Esther's marital status, particularly when it comes to her relationship with Mordecai. They suggest that Esther was initially taken against her will and was not considered to be a willing participant in her marriage to Ahasuerus. This view changes when Esther goes to Ahasuerus voluntarily, which has consequences for her and Mordecai. Esther does not reveal her origins. Esther is praised for not revealing her Jewish identity following the instructions of Mordecai. The rabbinic sources draw parallels between Esther and other biblical figures who concealed significant information. Esther comes to the rescue of her people. The rabbinic sources provide insights into Esther's actions when she learned of Haman's decree against the Jews. She is described as engaging in fasting and prayer, seeking divine intervention to save her people. Her actions are seen as self-sacrificing, even at the cost of her own life. Esther's stratagems. Esther is noted for employing various strategies to deal with Haman and protect her people. These strategies include inviting Ahasuerus and Haman to feasts and setting traps for Haman. Esther delivers up Haman and reveals her identity. When Esther sought to reveal Haman's evil intentions and protect her people, she disclosed her identity as a Jew. This act played a pivotal role in the events that followed. The Book of Esther and Esther's prophecy. The rabbinic sources consider the Book of Esther as a sacred text and discuss its acceptance as scripture. Esther is also viewed as a prophet, included among 7 women prophets. Esther as the deliverer of Israel. Esther is celebrated as the deliverer of the Jewish people, and she is likened to the moon, which provides light in the darkness. Her willingness to risk her life to save her people is emphasized. These rabbinic interpretations provide a deeper understanding of Queen Esther's character, her role in the Purim story, and her significance in Jewish tradition. The rabbis held varying opinions about Esther's marital and sexual status in the context of her marriage to King Ahasuerus and her relationship with Mordecai. Initially, Esther was seen as someone who was compelled to marry Ahasuerus against her will, and her passivity in the marriage was interpreted as not involving illicit sexual intercourse, which is considered a grave sin. Consequently, she was not considered a married woman who willingly engaged in adultery, and she was permitted to continue living with Mordecai while being married to Ahasuerus. However, Esther's status changed when she went to Ahasuerus of her own free will, which the rabbis interpreted as having sexual connotations. This change in her behavior was seen as having tragic consequences for Esther and Mordecai. The rabbis also debated the question of children from Esther's union with Ahasuerus. Some traditions suggested that Esther used contraceptive methods to prevent pregnancy by Ahasuerus. Others maintained that she became pregnant but miscarried. There were even traditions that claimed Esther gave birth to significant historical figures, such as the last Darius or Cyrus. Additionally, the rabbis paid close attention to Esther's observance of the laws of Niddah, which pertain to ritual purity during menstruation. Mordecai was involved in ruling on these matters for Esther, and some interpretations suggest that Esther even showed her menstrual spotting to Torah scholars. These discussions and interpretations provide insights into the complex and detailed discussions among the rabbis regarding the character and actions of Esther in the Book of Esther.
How did her reign come to an end?
The death of Queen Esther is not explicitly described in the Bible or most traditional Jewish sources. The Book of Esther, the primary source for her story, ends with the successful intervention she and Mordecai made to save the Jewish people from Haman's plot. After the victory, the text mentions the establishment of the holiday of Purim, which is still celebrated today by Jews to commemorate these events. Additional details about Esther's death or the circumstances surrounding it can be found in various Jewish texts and traditions, including the Midrash, rabbinic commentaries, and stories. But these are not part of the canonical biblical account and may vary in their accounts. Some Jewish sources suggest that Esther and Mordecai are buried together in the city of Hamadan, Iran, while others provide different traditions or interpretations. It's important to note that the accounts of her death in these non-canonical sources are not universally accepted and are often subject to interpretation and legend. The Bible itself does not provide information about her death.
All right, thanks for this one. Guys, please subscribe to support the channel and for more videos. Really appreciated. Thanks. Also, check out our other videos as shown on the end screen now. Until next time, stay tuned.